Welcome to Education Connect by Nova, the podcast that explores innovative teaching methods and success stories, newsworthy updates in education, and current trends in the classroom. Whether you're a veteran educator, an industry thought leader, or a parent navigating the academic landscape for your child, we've got you covered. And hey, we know all about the hectic schedules in academics, so we're all about delivering content that's relevant, concise, and actionable. So hit that subscribe button and let's learn better together. Hey everyone, and welcome to Education Connect by Nova, the podcast where we learn from experts, innovators, and leaders in the world of education. Less than 2 years ago, ChatGPT released to the public and everything changed. 92% of Fortune 500 companies use generative AI, while 63% of teachers are warming up to the technology for lesson planning. While the business application of AI is somewhat benign, the usage eventually trickles down to students. Some educators cite difficulties with students using AI to complete at-home quizzes, write their essays, and, in the case of Khan Academy's Khanmigo, even tutor them. As time goes on, it may become more difficult to decipher machine-written assignments from humans. In the recent month, Duke University announced that it would no longer apply a weighted grade to essays submitted through admissions. Dean of Undergraduate Admissions, Christoph Guttentag, stated, "We no longer assume the essay is an accurate reflection of the student's actual writing ability." What does this mean for the college essay? Is it on its way to extinction with other qualifying replacements in tow, or will it evolve to stand the test of time? I'm here today with Amy, an educator who has taught in New York City, Hawaii, and Boston. She's an alumnus of Cornell and Harvard University with 15 years of college counseling experience. In that time, she's helped numerous students not only enter prestigious universities, but also identify their dream schools. Hey, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you today?
I'm good.
Thank you for joining. So when we say that something has weight in college admissions, we mean the importance. Since there are many different aspects of a college application, let's say essays, transcripts, letters of recommendations, and so on, my question is, do colleges weigh all these components equally, or are there some varying degrees of how important one thing is over another?
I think that colleges are shifting a little bit more toward the hard data kinds of things, like your GPA, your test scores, and your extracurriculars and your letters of recommendation. I think those are getting more weight in some ways than the essay. The thing about the essay, though, is that it's the one place where a student can control something in their application and really put their best foot forward. And so even though Duke is not giving it a numerical weight, they are using it to find out facts about the student, what they're interested in, who they are. And although AI is coming in, at the moment, you can tell when something has been written by ChatGPT versus written by a human, because they can write a perfectly grammatically correct essay, but the heart of it is not in there. The values that the kids have, their defining qualities, stuff like that. And that's where AI can't, at least at the moment, bridge that gap about personal things.
Okay, perfect. So the primary objective of the college essay is to get to know that student a bit better or really understand what their passions are. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
However, one thing that's really interesting is that in the elite colleges, the essay is still being looked at as a very important part of their admissions. If you have a really great standout essay, it still can help you. It's still in that realm of, just because Duke is doing that doesn't mean that every other school is doing this exact same thing.
Makes sense. Now, one of my other questions about that too, just jumping into it. So some of these components of the college application are weighted differently, but could you also say that some colleges even weigh things differently than other colleges? Like, for example, let's say a university might put more weight onto a college essay versus a transcript, and then another college might do the opposite, weight the transcript higher than the college essay. Could that happen too?
It can happen. I think one of the big places where you can prove that it's happening is MIT, Dartmouth. Several colleges are requiring SATs when they were test optional before. So if they're requiring it, it's an important component of your application. And in those schools, it's probably more important than if you go test optional and send in your scores anyway. It's not going to help you as much as if the school requires the SAT. I think also The basic things that colleges weigh are very similar. The first thing everybody looks at is the rigor of your courses and your grades. That is hugely important. And the letters of recommendation you have become much more of heavily weighted. Letters of recommendation are really important, especially if they're very personalized and can speak to your skills and your abilities as a student. So yes, colleges can be different, but every admissions officer I've ever talked to says that the grades and the rigor of your academics is really the top of the file.
And that coincides perfectly with what you're saying, the hard facts over the maybe nuances of who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense. So besides writing skills or, the passion that you might have as a student, are there any other things that a college essay indicates about a student?
Yes, it can tell how long and how committed they are to the activities that are on their application. They can talk about what they've done, how long they've done it, why it's important to them. Having depth in your extracurriculars right now is more important than breadth. They want to see that you are truly passionate about something and have done it for several years, and you didn't just put it on your application at senior year. And that's something you can go into detail about in the essay that will help you.
Perfect. So now, just going back to Duke University, so they're, as of right now, one of the primary or maybe even only colleges, as of the date of this recording, that is making this change with their college admissions, specifically with the essay. So you just mentioned it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to throw the essay away.
Mm-hmm.
They might use it a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like this is maybe a choice that coincides with ChatGPT or generative AI, or do you think this is kind of just like changing of the times in general?
I feel like there's a little bit of the sky is falling with AI.
Yeah.
I think that it can generate an essay. And I think it makes people nervous that they're not going to be able to decipher whether it's written by a machine or a human. So I do think it's been highly affected by ChatGPT and the rise of this generative AI. Because no one knows where it's going to go, and it's only going to get better from here. Like, this is the worst ChatGPT is ever going to be. And so as it grows and improves, then I think it's going to be even harder to make that distinction between human and student. So I do think it's going to change a lot of the way that essays are seen.
Okay. Do you see other colleges potentially following the same path?
I think there are trends in education, and when one school does something like MIT requiring the SAT, then all of a sudden Dartmouth is doing it and somebody else is doing it. So I do think there's somewhat of a domino effect. I don't think the essay will ever be thrown out, but I do think that its importance might be lessened in terms of being a marker of someone's writing ability. But the content in it, I think, will always remain very, very important.
Right. And now, just imagining a world where college essays have perhaps different importance, maybe let's say not less, but let's say different importance in the admissions process. What are some other ways that you could recommend students display their strong writing and research skills if perhaps the college essay is no longer that outlet?
Mm-hmm. There are lots of ways that you can show your research and writing skills. So for instance, if you're a STEM kid, you can work in a lab. You can try and get a scientific paper published, which if it's good enough, you really can get it into a reputable journal, which is great. If you're a humanities kid, maybe you work for the school newspaper. There are ways that you can sort of prove your writing level by doing these outside things and having them be in the real world and given weight and value.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like to add, or anything related to Duke or even the college essay, and so on?
One thing that we haven't talked about that's rising in importance are interviews. All of a sudden, there are a lot of colleges saying, oh, we'll interview you virtually, or you can record a video. Brown, you can record a video of yourself and send it in. And I would highly recommend that foreign students use a service like Initial View. An initial view is a service where the student is recorded answering basic questions, and it can show the candidate's English proficiency level, because sometimes an English proficiency written test, again, is not necessarily finished and done by the student. But if you're in initial view and it's an interview of you speaking, they can tell your English proficiency right away and your personality and who you are. So I think the rise of interviews and videos is very interesting and kind of a new frontier.
That's really interesting. Yeah, exactly. So initial view is the service.
I believe there are other ones, but that's the one I'm familiar with.
Okay. Well, that's really, and it does seem to play a big part in the way, even in social media, how it's really turned into short form video over the last few years, last 4 years, let's say. And it seems like people are kind of going into this more pithy, easy to digest kind of biopic about somebody.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And that's the last thing I'll say is prepare for your interviews. Be ready to, in a short period of time, really be able to answer questions and show who you are and, your thoughts and feelings, and, get that across in a short period of time.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. And so that's a great advice. I mean, a big part of college admissions, or really, advances in any way, is pivoting with the times, right? And so we can't always expect college admissions to be the same now as they were 20 years ago, or even 20 years in the future. So certainly that's great advice for students who are kind of, let's say planning on the horizon and thinking about how to set themselves apart from the general peers that they have. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate your time today.
It's my pleasure. Anytime. Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us today on Education Connect.